with I should have started with, we will be recording a portion of this webinar. And let me get back to the intro, but welcome to Trans Resilience in the Classroom, an overview of the Virginia Department of Education's 2023 Model Policies. You are joined today by Side by Side Virginia, ACLU of Virginia, Pride Liberation Project, and he, she, ze, and we. You have a phenomenal cohort of presenters today who will cover quite a bit of information. So with us today is myself, Brianna Diaz. My pronouns are she and they, and I'm the Policy and Legislative Counsel for ACLU. Kylie Hines, who's the Director of Advocacy and Community Engagement for Equality Virginia. Shannon McKay, the co-founder and Executive Director of He, She, Ze, and We. Ariana Hamidi, Director of Outreach and Support Programs for Side by Side, and Casey Calavia, Organizer of Pride Liberation Project. So we got a full panel and a lot of information to go over with you all today. But before we transition into the presentation, we are going to start with a mindfulness and a message of support. And so I turn it over to Equality Virginia.
Thank you so much, Brianna, and great to see everyone here tonight. My name is Narissa Rahman. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Executive Director of Equality Virginia. And I just wanted to open the space tonight with a little bit of a mindfulness exercise and a message of support for everyone who is joining us tonight, no matter how you are showing up in this space today or whatever feelings you are bringing to this space. They are 100% real and valid, and you're allowed to feel the way that you feel, and whether that changes throughout this webinar is okay as well. And so I wanted to share with you a poem that I read that I found from a mixed media artist who is Black, autistic, and has ADHD. I've been reading her words recently to help just sort of bring some peace into the space as we all process the news that we received about the model policies. And so this is titled If July. And I just recommend you get into a comfortable space, whatever that is for you. You can feel free to close your eyes, focus on your breathing, however you want to show up during this period. So this is titled If July. If July was the month when everything happened, I just hope you know this. It doesn't make you weak to feel it all again. I hope you know it's okay if it takes time to figure out how sunlight will shine on this. I hope you know you are free to move through this space without perfect words for how you feel. I hope you know that with or without the closure, you are still worthy of the journey to heal. Be kind to yourself when it all catches up to you. May the very room you're in become a breathing room. May the sound of your next exhale be the sound of a small ocean wave finally reaching the edge of the sea. And after you let that exhale go, just let it be, for there will be many more waves after. May the space you're creating right here pave the way for future chapters. And what is this next chapter going to look like? I can't tell you that I know, but if it's anything like the last ones, there might just be room to grow. And not just in a garden sense, where there are flowers to bloom and gaze upon, but also in the ocean sense, where expansiveness goes on and on and on. I know that not being able to make sense of it all is tiring, trying to hold it all in the human hand or mind. And I know it is hard to be patient when you're all too aware that the clocks are running out of time. But I can tell you this, even though this journey has stretched you and ran your strength to its edge, you are still free to pause, rest, and heal as you meander your way through all of this. Wherever you can, especially around the borders of the forest, slow down and listen for the ocean sounds. However long you can, let yourself roam free without worry of making sense of everything. You will brush up against the longing to push past the uncertainty again and again. But from the forest to the garden to the sea, you will also brush up to horizon line, where morning light shines in. Let the warmth of the sunlight remind you, you will encounter different kinds of growth in ways you may never even expect. Let this remind you to breathe deep on winding paths as they whisper, you haven't encountered all that is beautiful yet. Thank you for letting me share space with you all tonight, and I will turn it back to Brianna.
Thank you so much for grounding us tonight, Narissa, as we will be just, unpacking a lot of difficult information tonight, but there is so much work ahead of us and we will win in the long term. And so thank you for that reminder that as part of our long-term effort to take care of ourselves. Thank you. One more disclaimer before we get started. We do request that if any media is on this webinar tonight, that you please do not record it. We will have a recording provided for you. And should you have any questions about the presentation, we are happy to connect you with our presenters tonight. So we kindly ask for no recording by media and to follow up with the presenters. Thank you. All right, y'all. So with that, we're gonna get started. So tonight we have quite a bit of information to unpack together, and there will be plenty of time to have a discussion about what you are experiencing, questions you may have, and we'll also go over several actions you all can take. So just real quick, our webinar, we will start with an overview of the 2023 model policies by the ACLU of Virginia and Pride Liberation Project. We will then go into school board advocacy with Equality Virginia and Pride Liberation Project, followed by support and resources by He, She, Ze, and We, and Side by Side Virginia. So a lot to unpack tonight, but again, plenty of opportunity for questions, answers, and actions. So let's get started. First, the 2023 VDOE model policies. So I'm going to start with a bit of a timeline before I dive into the 2023 model policies themselves. As I know, the past 3 years have been a lot. Understanding what are the model policies, what are the versions that school boards need to adopt, and how many versions exist. So we put this graphic up. And I'm going to walk through it quickly, just starting with, where do these model policies even come from? So in 2020, the Virginia General Assembly passed a law directing the Virginia Department of Education to develop evidence-based best practice model policies on the treatment of trans and non-binary students. So these model policies are legislatively mandated or created. And again, they are required to be evidence-based best practices, and were put together by various stakeholders, including parents, school counselors, teachers, school board members, trans youth, and VDOE staff themselves. You can actually see that full list on the original 2021 model policies. So, oh, okay, we had some music. So the law was passed in 2020, and then in 2021, under the Northam administration, the Virginia Department of Education created and released those trans-affirming model policies that all 131 public schools here in Virginia were required to adopt by the 2021 school year. But we all know from personal experience or from reading the news or hearing from friends that unfortunately not all 131 school districts adopted the 2021 good model policies. Some adopted a patchwork of those policies, some rejected them, and then some didn't even vote on them at all. So what we saw in 2021 up until even today was a patchwork of school districts on whether they had adopted the trans-affirming 2021 model policies. Enter 2022, we see a change in the executive, or we see a new governor. And under Governor Youngkin's Virginia Department of Education, on September 2022, Youngkin's VDOE proposed withdrawing the 2021 trans affirming model policies and replacing them with new anti-trans model policies. So that is what we all saw in September of 2022. Over the next 30 days, going into October, the proposed model policies were open to public comment, and you all made your comments known. VDOE was overwhelmed with 71,000 public comments submitted in response to the proposed anti-trans model policies. 71,000. That is a record-breaking number of comments submitted to a guidance document, and a majority of those opposed. Even so, now in July of 2023, yeah, way to go, Virginians. But unfortunately, while we made our voices heard and known that we Virginians do not want these model policies, the Youngkin administration's Virginia Department of Education went forward with them and finalized them and released them in July of 2023. So we recognize that these are harmful policies, and I'm sure everyone is very worried about the impact it'll have on themselves, on their child, and those they care for. But we really want to emphasize here that these 2023 anti-trans model policies must be implemented at the local level by a school board adopting them. So until a school board has adopted them, they are not in effect. Next. So yeah, so I kind of went over this, but just like some of the top 3 bullet points is that, where are the 2023 model policies now? They've been finalized by the Virginia Department of Education. They rescind and replace the 2021 good model policies. And that they require that public school boards adopt the 2023 model policies consistent with or more comprehensive than the model policies, which means more comprehensive means school boards can actually do more than what the 2023 model policies outline. The model policies are essentially the floor. They are not the ceiling for which a school board can adopt policies related to transgender and non-binary students. Next. So there's a lot of differences. There is a lot of differences between the 2021 and 2023 model policies, but we're going to focus in on 3 main ones. I'm so sorry. 3, the first one is the student ability to self-identify. The second is updating school records. And the third is access to gendered facilities and activities. So then starting with student ability to self-identify, the 2023 model policies essentially take that ability away from young people. The 2023 model policies prohibit school staff, teachers, principals, counselors, prohibit school staff from using a student's affirming name and pronoun. It also prohibits school counselors from discussing gender or gender identity with students until a parent has been notified and approves of that guidance or that counseling service. So essentially what this does is, as I said earlier, it takes away a young person's ability to self-identify on their own timeline, to disclose who they are to trusted friends or teachers. Or really anywhere, because, if a student claims to be, shares who they are, and even if a teacher acknowledges, respects, and wants to affirm that student's affirming pronoun and affirming name, this model policy prohibits that practice unless a certain criteria is met. So next. And that criteria is updating school records. So this is a new requirement under the 2023 model policy. So the 2023 model policy requires a parent or guardian to provide a written record of a student's affirming name and pronoun. So what that looks like in practice is that, schools typically have for a student their name, their legal name, their sex assigned at birth, unless it has been already updated or updated to match their, affirming identity. And typically practice has been what, if a student says, this is actually that's my legal name, or, gender or pronoun, like my affirming name and my affirming pronoun is actually this. And then, teachers could then use that affirming name and pronoun. But that is no longer allowed under this policy. Now, to have a student's name and identity respected and affirmed, a parent must provide a written record that will be kept in a student's personnel record, essentially signing off on that's the student's affirming name and pronoun and what the teacher should go by. And of course, a lot of folks might think, what's the problem with that? And of course, we want to encourage safe and open communication between parent, student, and, educators. But the reality is that not all young people come from safe and affirming households. It also takes away their ability and autonomy to, again, discover who they are and share with their most trusted community members, which can include teachers, who they are. It takes away a lot of that ability to self-identify and control their own story. So we see a lot of problems with this. And then finally, sorry, go back one more to the previous slide, sorry. Finally, with that written record, even where a parent provides that written record, let's say you have a great parent who affirms you, puts that written record in there and is like, this is what you're going to call my kid because that's who they are. The model policies still allow school staff to misgender and dead name students. So you can go through this entire process that this policy outlines and still face misgendering and dead naming. That's what this policy rubber stamps, because it's not actually about creating a respectful, affirming, inclusive environment or addressing anti-bullying, harassment, and stigma that so many trans youth face in schools. It's actually endorsing those practices. So just noting that. But next. So the access to gendered facilities. This is where things are going to get very difficult to see in practice if and when school boards start adopting the 2023 model policies. So throughout the policy, the model policies, it says that it denies transgender and non-binary students full access to education, school facilities, and sports teams. For school facilities, that's bathrooms, locker rooms, any traditionally sex-segregated spaces. The model policies provide that a student may only use facilities that are consistent with their sex assigned at birth, or what the model policies are terming biological sex. And so for many folks here, they probably already recognize, wait, isn't that against the law? Doesn't my child have the right to access a bathroom or a locker room consistent with their gender identity? And yes, they do. That is federal law. That is the Gavin Grimm case, where the Fourth Circuit and the Supreme Court of the United States upheld that trans youth have the right to access bathrooms consistent with their gender identity. And the model policies themselves actually recognize the conflict they're creating, and that it includes, if you ever want to read the language, I think we have a link to the policies if someone wants to drop them in the chat and you feel like reading them now. When it comes to accessing school facilities and sports teams, they're qualifying language that says no access to bathrooms so far as federal law allows. So essentially that language demonstrates that there is a conflict of law here. And so we are really concerned with what the impact will be on trans youth who are most likely, who, if they're not already being denied access to facilities, that this model policies rubber stamping more folks, or creating confusion about whether they can access facilities, and opening up school boards to legal liability for violating federal law. So overall, the model policies are just creating confusion and detracting from real issues in public schools, like student safety, like teacher shortages, equity, and funding. There are so many things that our public schools need and our teachers, students, and staff require. And one of those things is not trying to tell someone where to use the bathroom or what sport they can play on. Next. And I'm actually going to turn it over now to Casey with the Pride Liberation Project.
Hi, everyone. So lovely to be with you all tonight. I'm Casey. I'm organizing director with the Pride Liberation Project. My pronouns are they, them. So to the extent, hi, Mr. Rigby, to the extent of Virginians rejecting the model policies, or the Don't Be Trans policies. As stated, there were a record number of comments from both parents, students, allies, teachers, and people all across the country and the state, and a majority of the comments opposed the 2023 policies, which was a win. But understandably, the VDOE ignored that. But, including in our response to the initial outlining of these policies was a very, very large walkout that my team in the Pride Liberation Project helped organize. We had about 12,000 students across the country on one single day walk out and made an effort to make sure that student voices were prioritized in the discussion of the transgender model policies. Students and parents made an effort to ensure that Governor Youngkin and anybody else knows that we do not support this. It has a detrimental effect to transgender students that I know personally. Should the transgender model policies have been implemented in my school, it would have been a major detriment to my mental health, to my friends' mental health. So for a student response, there is very strong support. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that overview, Casey, of, again, an overwhelming number of Virginians opposed these model policies in public comment. And Casey and Pride Liberation Project led, 12,000 students walked out in a day across Virginia to show that they don't want this. This is a solution in search of a problem where one just doesn't exist. And so I think in addition to just popular opinion and Virginians saying we do not want these model policies, this is not an issue that we should be focused on when discussing education. The model policies also completely reject or ignore what the legislature did in this last session. In the 2023 legislative session, everyone in this webinar tonight worked and helped defeat all 12 anti-trans bills introduced. Those bills included forced outing bills, which the model policies do, trans athlete bans, which are exactly what the model policy does, and so much more. So we already told the governor, we already said, these are not wanted, the people don't want them, and we reject them. The same is true for classroom censorship bills, which implicate LGBTQ youth. There were 13 of those bills introduced last session, and all of them were defeated. So I think we just wanted to highlight this to show that these model policies are unpopular, they're unwanted, and they've already been rejected. And then I think this is my final slide, but this was just to real quick, this is another graphic that we just wanted to highlight that shows the process for implementing the Virginia Department of Education's model policies. And we've gone over, the law that created them, the draft, the public comments, as well as the finalized version. And now the last part is that school boards must adopt model policies. And this is really where we all are now. So I'm going to turn it over to Equality Virginia to share their school board advocacy work. Oh, dang, I forgot. And I was going to say those graphics that we've just shared are available at the ACLU's Protect Trans Youth Hub. We'll drop a link in the chat if you'd like to see those graphics to spend more time with them. Thank you.
Awesome. So we are going to get into now school board advocacy. So what does this look like on the school board level? Thanks, Bree, for that overview of the new model policies. And so I'm going to go through some information, and then I'm also going to be passing it to Casey from Pride Liberation Project to share some of their work that they've been doing and some insights that they have from going to school board meetings on the ground. And so where are school boards? So in Virginia, as you might know, there's 131 public school boards in the state, which sounds like a lot. There's a few states where there's quite a bit more, but there's each individual school board, considers these policies separately. The Virginia Constitution provides that school boards are highly autonomous. They kind of get to do their own thing in a lot of aspects, and so they must each individually consider these policies. So we should not be seeing school boards, or schools just blanketly, changing practices and implementing these policies without the school board that oversees those schools in adopting the policy. And, there's school boards that are already considering the 2023 model policies. They've been out for barely 2 weeks. And, you know, we've seen Roanoke County considering them. We've seen a couple other school boards have them on like discussion parts of the agenda, so not considering them super intensely just yet, but definitely talking about them. So that's just something to be aware of, that it is already starting at the school board level. And then, like Bree mentioned earlier, with the original 2021 affirming model policies, they were required to be adopted by a certain timeline, right? Like they had to be adopted by the deadline of the 2021-2022 school year. And then with these new policies, we don't have that clarity on the deadline to adopt because the deadline was established by the original bills, which was back in 2020. And the governor, when these new 2023 model policies were released, did not provide any additional clarity on an exact deadline that school boards needed to adopt this new version. And so we might see, you know, school board arguments and discussions about these policies carry on, you know, indefinitely over the next several months. And then, so with school board activity, so just keeping up with school board activity across the state with terms and procedures. Like I mentioned, school boards are highly autonomous. They kind of can do their own thing in some aspects, but they all tend to follow a similar general process for policy adoption. So that usually looks like, you know, a first reading of a policy, which happens, it's usually placed on a section of the agenda. If you're looking at a school board agenda, it'll usually say information items or information agenda. And that just means that the school board members are being introduced to the policy for the first time. They're discussing it officially as a school board for the first time. And they cannot take, or they usually are not taking an immediate vote on that policy. And so the policy is considered at this stage in a draft form, which means that, you know, school board members could choose to amend the policy in between the first reading and the second reading. So just because you see a certain policy, if they decide to, you know, adopt their own version of the new model policy, there could be some changes that happen in between the information part and the actual action or vote. And when they do have a second reading, it'll be on the action agenda or action items section of the entire school board agenda. So that's where they will, you know, take action and vote to adopt or not adopt the policy. And then we have, you know, work sessions, regular sessions, and closed sessions with school boards. Regular sessions are your typical school board meeting, right, where everybody's showing up, giving public comment, you know, votes are happening, it's broadcast publicly, it's open to the public. Work sessions are also open to the public, but they are not, you can't give public comments. So you can show up and you can watch, but you can't directly participate or interact with the school board. You can kind of just observe what they're doing. Usually they're not making drastic decisions during work sessions because best practice tells us that we should be doing those in public meetings where folks are able to offer input. And so when folks are, you know, in work sessions, they're watching the school board, and then closed sessions are happening usually during a regular sessions, either before or on the same day before or after, or at the very end of a regular meeting. And those are not open to the public, which is why a lot of school boards do them before the meeting, before they get into the public portion. But those sessions, they should not be taking any, you know, votes on policies. They're really just for the school board to discuss, you know, confidential matters like personnel decisions, private student matters, consult with their, you know, their lawyer, get legal advice, things like that. And so all of that to say, like, they could be talking about the model policies in these sessions, but, you know, the public is not, they release a report afterwards, but the public is not able to watch that. But they will not be talking about it to the extent of, you know, deciding what to do on the policy or voting on it. And then so public comment is during, as I mentioned, the most regular sessions. I saw in the chat some work sessions might allow public comment. Again, so many different school boards in Virginia, and they all tend to do something a little different, but in most cases, regular session is where you would give public comment. And, you know, we have a school board tracker, which I'll go over on the next slide, that will give you all the information about how to sign up for public comment if you're choosing to show up at a school board meeting. And kind of similar to how I mentioned earlier, there's, you know, the different agendas, right? So there's the consent agenda. So the consent agenda is policies or procedures or decisions, regulations that the school board usually doesn't consider to be quote unquote controversial. Usually they're, you know, accepting final drafts of the meeting minutes from the previous meeting or things like that. And so we usually don't see policies that we're keeping track of show up on consent agendas. That isn't to say it hasn't happened, but it usually doesn't. And when they pass things on a consent agenda, they just take a vote for literally everything on the agenda. And like I mentioned earlier, information is just for discussion and information. And then the action agendas are where they, have things that they are considering either adopting or moving forward with or not. And so I'm going to pass it to Casey real quick to talk about their work with PLP and what they've seen happening at school board meetings.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So when it comes to being at school board meetings, it can be really either super boring. I mean, at the end of the day, it is a school board meeting. So especially for student advocates, you have 1,000 other things going on. But what is more important is when it doesn't get boring, when especially before and sometimes after school board meetings, there can be people with different views from ourselves who make a point to insert themselves in conversations we're having or speeches being given. And to that extent, it's really important for students to be there with adults that they trust and to also be given a space to speak, especially within the public comments. Students can give their own testimonies about their own experiences in different school board meetings. We've had students give their friends testimonies that they can't do in public to emphasize that there are kids who are not able to be seen in public as queer. There is a lot of contention and struggle with getting kids to show up, but as we educate our fellow students on the importance of the transgender model policies, we've seen an uptake in student interest in in school board.
So thank you so much, Casey, for sharing that. So like I mentioned earlier, Equality Virginia has a school board policy and meeting tracker. This is kind of a one-stop shop. Thank you, Wyatt, for sharing the link in the chat. Make sure to follow that link. This is our one-stop shop for school board info. We have, took over a year, I think it was about 18 months, to compile as much information as we could about every single school board in Virginia and put it all in one place so that folks can, if you want to know when a meeting is happening or where it's happening or what's on the agenda, you can just go to our tracker because every school board website is set up differently. So, like I said, you can check meeting dates, what's popping up on agendas, and how to sign up for public comment. It'll have, links or phone numbers to call or emails to send an email to, usually to the clerk to sign up for public comment. As well as, a link to watch the virtual meeting. There's a lot of stuff on there. So I encourage you to follow the link and, use the tracker whenever you're thinking about showing up at a school board meeting or just trying to keep track of what's going on. Now I'll pass it to Shannon from He, She, Ze, and We.
Thank you, Kylie, and thanks for all your work on that school board tracker. I know that took a lot of your time. So I'm not going to take up too much time here, but we just really want families in Virginia to know where they can go and get support. And He, She, Ze, and We is one of those places. So our mission is really to work to support transgender and non-binary people by empowering their families, allies, and communities to create those life-saving and inclusive environments. And we do this work through heavy education and support directly to our families, but also the community at large, and through our advocacy work with our community partners that are here on this in this webinar. So thank you to everybody here for showing up, and consider joining one of our committees to be able to join us in our work as well, if you feel so inclined to volunteer. Next, please. So some ways that you can engage with He, She, Ze, and We is through, as I said, our educational support meetings. These are geared towards adult family members, and we have more than one opportunity every single week to connect with other people and learn more about gender diversity and how to access quality resources such as the ones on this webinar and others, and also ways to support your loved ones. We have morning, daytime, and evening opportunities to connect We also have a BIPOC meeting, an interfaith meeting, and we have virtual meetings or in-person opportunities. So these are the places where we are currently meeting in person in Richmond, Fredericksburg, and Lynchburg. And then we are going to be opening in Harrisonburg, Arlington, and New River Valley. Hopefully we'll reopen there as well. So community and ally education is one way we're also trying to help improve the lives of trans and non-binary folks, and especially our youth, by really going out and spreading information about, best practices through a gender lens. We also have guest speaker events because providing possibility models or the real experts about their lived experiences is, I feel, the best way for everyone to get the most important information from trans and non-binary people directly. We also will have an Ask an Expert series occasionally to cover topics that our families really need to hear. And we also provide individual consultations where maybe you're not a group person and you want to just connect on a one-to-one level about what possible next steps look like. And building community, of course, right now is more important than ever before. And I wish that one year I could stop saying that, but this work is absolutely crucial. And one way that we try to connect and lift up, support, and celebrate trans joy is through our Family Connections program. And this is for school-age kids, K through 12th grade, to just get together and have fun. We have some funding for this through some corporations. And individual donations as well. We also are going to be focusing on some adult socials this year because the parents and caregivers need community too. And then we find that volunteering, now that everyone's opening back up from being closed in from the pandemic, that our volunteers are really connecting with the community and gaining more support. We're figuring out who our supporters are, whether that's financial or human resources, and it really helps develop those strong connections. And then allyship is definitely a verb, as you probably will learn from any and all of these organizations here tonight, that acceptance is really not support. So we really need folks to step up and take some actions. And that's something that we can ask from not just our community, but really all of our allies. And folks can get involved with he, she, ze, and we by scanning the QR or just go to our website. For new families that need our support, our education, and our resources, they can fill out what's called a confidential contact form. If anyone is interested in bringing ally and community education to your school or your community, you can fill out a form that talks about that. And then, of course, small organizations like ours and the others here tonight always appreciate donations. So don't forget, we all take donations all year long. So that's my plug for that. And thank you. If anyone has any questions, you can reach out directly. And I'm going to pass it over to Ariana.
Hello, thanks, Shannon. Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad to see so many folks here. So thanks for being here and showing up for our youth. We at Side by Side, we've been here for 30 years, over 30 years. And we work directly with youth to meet their needs and create supportive communities where they can thrive and feel a sense of belonging. So we provide direct service to LGBTQIA youth ages 11 through 25 using a variety of supports and emergency assistance. What those things are, if we could go to the next slide. So we have 5 support groups currently for youth to participate in, a middle school group, a trans non-binary support group, 2 high school groups, and a youth of color group. We also have a parent caregiver support group that meets once a week. And all of our groups are hybrid, so you're welcome. Anyone in the state can join online, or you're welcome to come in person. We also have mental health counseling with licensed clinicians, housing support, advocacy, and education. And I'm going to go through some of these programs and services in a little more detail. For the support groups, they are facilitator-led and peer support spaces. They share their stories, they support others, they develop a lot of skills, and I am a big believer in peer learning. And we really see the kids change, the youth change positively and dramatically in a short amount of time. It also gives them an opportunity to build community with people who are similarly situated. We also have drop-in hours, which are open to the public, and parents can come with their youth if they would like, and be connected to resources, hang out with other youth, talk to staff. There's a lot of fun stuff that happens during those drop-in hours. So that's a good time to stop by and ask questions or see the space, etc. So for housing, our housing program is for young adults ages 18 to 25. We do emergency financial assistance. We connect to rapid rehousing. We connect to emergency housing and permanent housing as we can, and other resources. We help with life skills like resumes, job interviews, filling out things to, get an ID, connect to social services. Yeah. And then for advocacy and education, we skipped, I already kind of mentioned this, and that's okay. We'll skip to, yes, let me just say this. I wanted to mention that for our clinical services, parent permission is required, but we do not require parental permission for our support groups for ages 14 and up. So for the middle schoolers, 11 to 13, we do need that, but beyond that, youth are welcome to come. And that's a really important aspect for youth that do not have supportive families. For the mental health counseling, they are no cost. All of our services are free, and there are some eligibility requirements. Welcome to reach out to me if you're wondering if your youth would be eligible, and those are available in person or through telehealth. For advocacy and education, we offer a variety of trainings in the community. Go to organizations and businesses, and we can tailor those trainings for your needs. We also have a school coordinator who helps to form and to give support and guidance for the GSAs in the various schools. So if you're interested in getting your GSA off the ground for your middle school or high school, we can certainly help with that. And working on developing youth leadership and teaching the youth direct advocacy for themselves. Thanks everyone. And I also wanted to just mention as a follow-up to this webinar, on August 15th, from 6:30 to 8:30, we will side by side, we'll be hosting a parent and caregiver chat. Brianna will be joining us for that, and we appreciate her for that. And will be a place to ask more questions, to get support, build some community with other families. And so we hope to see you at that if you'd like. And anyone, I'll put my email in the chat so anyone can reach out if they'd like. Thanks. I think it goes to Brianna.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that phenomenal overview from Kylie with Equality Virginia and Casey from Pride Liberation Project on the importance of school board advocacy, and that now, if you have not already been involved with your school board, now is the time, as these 2023 model policies, because they are finalized, they now go to school boards for school boards to possibly vote on. And as Kylie mentioned, we've already had several school districts say they either will never support them, and we've had a couple of school boards already discuss, debate, and will likely vote on them in the next month. So please go to the Equality Virginia tracker to learn where your school stands on these model policies and opportunities for you to plug in to let your school board know where you stand on this issue. I also, again, want to shout out he, she, Z, and we and Side by Side for going over their support services, because we know that not all of us are going to be able, you don't have access to supporting and affirming families, or live in a school school district that doesn't affirm and recognize our rights as trans and non-binary and queer people. And so these support services that they provide are those small community spaces where we can connect, where we can strategize, and where we can learn together. So I just really want to emphasize, like, the work they do is critical. It is life-saving. And if you ever need support, know you have it here in Virginia. And so I'm now going to take it over to Take Action Now and just hit on a couple of opportunities, some of which you've heard, and some that are going to be new to hear, but let's flip through. We've given you a lot of information, a lot of, ways to engage and how to access support systems. So, like, what can you do right now, right? I know, like, people also have a lot of questions, and I swear we're going to get to them. They're really good questions. But Equality Virginia has a sign up to take action. You can sign up to join Equality Virginia's Safe Schools Action Network, which will alert you to opportunities like public comment training. So, like, how to give a public comment at a school board meeting, and really any information you need to know to be the school board advocate you all probably already are. And they also have a school board advocacy training coming up. Wow, Equality Virginia doing the thing. So that is on Tuesday, August 22nd. There is a link to register. Thank you so much, Wyatt, for putting both in the chat. We recommend folks sign up for that. Again, touching on what Side by Side shared, they are having a parent conversation on August 15th. For folks who want to join that to learn more about the 2023 model policies and get a more, I think, direct conversation about what you're experiencing in schools with your kids. Next, a couple call to actions. Sorry, I was reading the chat. God, y'all are so chatty, and I really appreciate it. So a couple other call to actions is this reminder, and we saw a couple questions about this, is that it's really important. And I know you hear it every year, but it is so important. And this is a year to vote if you're able to, and if you want to, like, please vote. This November, over 100 school boards in Virginia are up for election. Either the entire board or, a set number of seats are up. That includes Orange County, Montgomery, Roanoke County, Loudoun. So many school districts are up for election this year, and it is critical that you know your candidates running, and that you vote your values and vote for candidates that will support trans rights. In addition to school board races, the entire General Assembly, that is Virginia's state legislature, all 140 seats are up for election this year. That is an entirely new GA. And honestly, our rights are on the ballot this year. If it was not for a pro-LGBTQ majority in the Senate, those 12 anti-trans bills I told you about, those 13 pro-classroom censorship bills I told you about, they would be law today. So it is more important than ever that we hold back and defend the rights of LGBTQ people, access to reproductive freedom, access to books and education that reflect the diversity of our communities. We have to ensure that remains in Virginia. So please get out and vote. You can follow the ACLU of Virginia to learn more about voting dates, how to check your status, and really also see who the candidates are. We have some cool election stuff coming out soon. And then finally, we have one action you all can take now that is less than a minute. It is the ACLU of Virginia Action Alert, Fight for Trans Youth. If you fill out this online action alert, it sends an email to the Virginia Department of Education's Secretary of Public Instruction, Dr. Lisa Coons. She is the person who heads the entire Virginia Department of Education and had to approve these 2023 model policies. you can send her an email to let her know that you don't support these 2023 model policies, that, you know, her Virginia Department of Education is out of step with the majority of Virginians, and the only outcome of these model policies will be real harm against our kids, our youth, and our community. So please, if you haven't already, take that action now. It takes less than a minute, and share it with your friends. Okay, so